What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Karnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, on today's episode, look, we've got our official hire of this coaching carousel, James Franklin of Virginia Tech. We're going to talk about it. Lane Kiffin, look, he's made it to like the final round of The Bachelor. Which team gets his rose? We're going to talk about it. We've got some questions after this past weekend. Updated college football playoff predictions, because we got to keep updating it. As you know, we only got a few weeks of this left. Our updated XPR. We've got updated college football playoff rankings. 3 uniform matchups, 3 more games we're watching, 4 picks against the spread, all on this episode. Daniel, only 2 more weeks of the regular season left. We only get a few more of these podcasts, man. I'm locked in, ready to enjoy it.
Dude, cling to it, man. Let's hold on tight to these last couple weeks. Next week's show, I mean, it's going to be, we're talking rivalry weekend, which, rivalry weekend is number 1 for me. Yeah. Number 2 is Labor Day. So it's like, it matters. And it's every game is important, whether it's CFP related or not. Every game is important, which you could say that about all of college football, but it's no better time. It's not embodied any better time than rivalry weekend, starting with Thanksgiving. I think Navy plays on Thanksgiving this year, so for America, keep that in mind. So let's do this.
Good to know. Daniel, we've got our first hire, James Franklin to Virginia Tech. We've done this before. I heard someone else doing it, and I'm like, man, did they listen to the Extra Point? I didn't prep you with this, but we grade these hires on single, double, triple, home run, which we've done here on the Extra Point before. And look, there's no rhyme or reason to why coaching searches work. This is all a guess on our part, obviously. But if you had to grade this coaching hire, Daniel, what are you giving this coaching hire?
I mean, this is a home run for Virginia Tech.
Yes.
I think that James Franklin should have and could have been tops on the list for a lot of jobs that were out there that weren't being talked about. I think Arkansas, there's a lot of their fan base that thought he may have been coming to them. And I was reading some of their message boards, and there were some crash outs, which that's just nature of the beast. But I think he made a good decision in a place that he can win. He's financially secure. So if there's like an up-and-coming coach taking a first-time job or taking a job, you might wait for something that is more secure with like an SEC or Big Ten school. But fit-wise, I think this is a great fit for him and a great fit for the school. Yeah, 10 out of 10.
Home run. Yeah, you got a coach that coached in the semifinal game last year as your head coach heading into next year. And you put him in the ACC, where instead of, before being in the same division as Ohio State and Michigan, he's now in the ACC that's going to have a championship game of some combination of like Virginia, Georgia Tech, Louisville, SMU. Like what school do you walk into the ACC next year saying we can't beat them in year one? One, Miami's on the schedule next year on the road. Clemson's on the schedule on the road, but I think both those schools have proven anybody can beat them. Talent gap doesn't matter, apparently. So this is a home run to me. I hope it works out. This is the kind of coach Virginia Tech needs, and the fact that he's available for your program. And I think geography too, right? He's been in the Midwest, like in Pennsylvania for 10 years, recruiting out of Ohio, out of Kentucky, out of New Jersey, out of the DMV. You put him into Virginia, same recruiting base. So I'm curious to see the staff he builds. And again, like Virginia Tech has openly said, like they didn't give Brent Pry, again, former Franklin assistant, by the way, Brent Pry, they didn't give him the resources he needed to be successful. It sounds like that's one thing Franklin needed guarantee of before he took the job was financial guarantees. It sounds like Virginia Tech's going to spend like a contender in the ACC. So, yeah, I think this is a home run. James Franklin's a very good football coach. Bottom line, I understand why Penn State fired him partially, but they just got a very good football coach. And I don't know who Penn State's going to hire. I don't know if they're going to hire someone who I think is a guaranteed better coach than James Franklin. I think that's
It feels kind of like when Auburn moved on from Gus Malzahn. Like
I
you could
think so too.
you could see why he got fired, and maybe he wasn't the greatest coach in the world at that time, or maybe it wasn't the right fit or whatever. You could make the argument for why he got fired, but he was a floor raiser, and there's a chance that you don't hire the right guy.
That's right.
Some other good stuff. I mean, he was a coach in late 90s in James Madison, and then early 2000s in Maryland, where he was actually the recruiting coordinator for 4 years. So you talk about the DMV and that area where there's just a very rich talent base. Obviously, he's been recruiting that area for a long time, but there's some deep relationships in that area. Second, he had another stint at Maryland, and of course, two more stints at Maryland. So he's had a lot of time recruiting that part of the country. So I think this is great. Virginia Tech, it was a great job.
I love it. Home run hire. Someone who's waiting to either be hired or extended and given a new contract. Lane Kiffin making the news this week. Look, this is the kind of college football that I didn't think we had anymore by chance. The message board culture, and like flight tracking was a big thing, like mid 2000s and like early 2010s of, look at this, this tail number. That's the university plane flying from, Lubbock to Starkville, and look at this. A lot of those tail numbers have become private now, so flight tracking's kind of gone away, and any flight tracking now is a little silly until, what's that? LSU hasn't made their tail number private, and all things go on the Bengal Tiger. As all of a sudden, someone tells him, hey, there's going to be a plane landing here soon. And he's like, I got my lunch break. I'm going to get a potato and go sit in the bushes and see what I can do with my long lens camera. And by God, he did. And out gets Lane Kiffin's family. So then it gets confirmed by, the LSU writers that, yes, Lane Kiffin's family is in Baton Rouge on Monday. And by the way, they were in Gainesville yesterday and no one knew, looking at schools and houses or whatnot. I've come to find out this happens quite often, and that this is not the only family that has taken visits to other cities this coaching cycle. It's just Lane is the most public. He's the one that...
Well, he's the hottest name. He's the one that everybody wants. He's at the two most high-profile jobs right now.
Yeah, exactly. He's the number one name for the two best jobs open right now. There's your... Yeah. So... Yeah, this is, I don't know what he's going to do, and then he's like, there's been no ultimatum. I'm like, sure, there's been no ultimatum. Has there been a handshake agreement saying you need to let us know by the Egg Bowl? Probably. But, Daniel, that's not an ultimatum, as Lane Kiffin said on McAfee. So this is interesting. I think it confirms what everyone thought, which is, hey, number one, Lane is the target for both of these schools, obviously. And Lane is considering and weighing his options, as he should. And, we read a great Twitter thread, not from anyone who knows anything, but a best guess, which made a lot of sense. Just saying, hey, to sum it up, Lane is considering these. He was serious about it being a family thing at Ole Miss, and so he's not going to do this without family approval. So he's seeing what his family thinks, because I do think his family is going to have a lot of input into this decision. I don't think he's lying at all about that. So if the family's willing to make a move, I think Lane's willing to make a move. I also think he means it when he says he's happy at Ole Miss. I just think he's looking internally. We talk about this, Daniel. Does Lane Kiffin want to win a national championship? And can he do that at Ole Miss? I think now it's a question versus a few years ago, I would have said an absolute no. I still think it's an uphill battle. I don't think it's an uphill battle at LSU or Florida. It's an uphill battle anywhere, but you know what I mean? It is easier access at LSU or Florida just because of resources. So, one, I love this. It's fun. This is what makes college football fun. Shout out to All Things Go. And I'm curious if we get word of an announcement before the Egg Bowl next week on Black Friday.
Yeah, it's coming. I mean, we'll see. It's one of these things where it's like he would be doing a disservice to not kick the tires and see what's going on with these. So, and you also understand Ole Miss's side of it, of like, they don't want to be his side piece while he's looking elsewhere. So like, they want to know, they want to be competitive and get a coach if they have to. It's just The one thing I'm worried about is these players on this team this year. This is a special team. I would hate for this to supersede all of that and for him to go in. Coaches go in distracted to playoff games or bowl games or whatever all the time. But for it to be a playoff and like this very special season from Ole Miss, and if he was to go in completely, hired by another school, would they allow him to still coach the bowl game or, to try to win this year? Would they, say, okay, we're going to go interim coach? There's so many ways it could go. You just don't want these kids to suffer. Like they've had a great year. Like let's finish it out strong for them somehow. Cause you just don't get this opportunity every single year, especially somewhere at Ole Miss, so.
Pate said this, and I thought it hit the nail on the head. Daniel, this is a consequence of the wrong people having their hands in the wheel of college football. This is the consequence of the calendar being a complete mess. Because the NFL has this figured out. You don't have a deadline of, if we don't hire a coach before the end of the season, because the draft happens to be between weeks 16 and 17. It's like, well, of course not. The draft is 4 months after the season ends, or 2 months after the season ends. And the combine's a month before that. We need to get the college football schedule figured out, because this could be better for all parties, where Lane does not have to even consider this before season's end, which honors, number one, his contract, and number two, just his relationship and like commitment to these kids and these players.
Yep.
And the school and the fans there at Ole Miss.
If they could match it up with the also NFL, in the sense that the NFL coaching search, what if an NFL coach opening, what if they go hire somebody from college? Well, then that school's starting over in January or whenever this is. Anyways,
the college football calendar is broken. It desperately needs to get fixed. College football desperately needs the right people with their hands on the wheel. And again, I mean, look, I don't have the perfect calendar off the top of my head, but we've got to have National Signing Day be after the season ends. We've got to have the portal window be after the season ends, but somehow before spring football begins. And that's going to, like, schools are going to have to adjust the academic calendar to help match the football calendar, which to me is not impossible. And I don't think we're far away from it, but we still need the right people with their hands in the wheel for the schedule to get perfect.
I agree.
Daniel, 2 questions we have moving forward after this past weekend. What's your first one?
Much like, James Franklin was the first domino to fall as far as a head coaching hire. Lane Kiffin may be the most important domino to fall as far as coaching carousel. My question is about Alabama and about the CFP. Are they the biggest domino in the CFP remaining? My point is they could get into the SEC championship game, of course, if they just win against Auburn. They could win it all, as far as winning that game and getting to the playoff and having even maybe a bye week with 2 losses. That's possible if you're an SEC champion. If you don't do that, let's say you go to the SEC championship game but lose, you could knock out other at-large bids potentially by being a 11 or 10 and 3, because you go 10 and 2 regular season, you lose the SEC championship, but 10 and 3, you could really complicate things for other teams that are at-large bids. And then if they just lose to Auburn, there's a chance they're left out altogether. This is the first night game in Jordan-Hare Stadium for the Iron Bowl since 2007. So it's crazy that that's the case, but I just feel like there's so much right. Like Alabama could reach the pinnacle still and fall completely out. Whereas before, if they would have just beaten Oklahoma, I think that there's a small window of, okay, it just depends on what seed they're going to be, but they could be all the way from the very top to the one that's just watching from home.
Yeah, Bama's an interesting case. I mean, they obviously control their own destiny still, but I am curious to see where they fall by seasons. Daniel, my first question is, I'm going to save that one. Has Georgia turned into Death Star Georgia? Or are we seeing a second team that looks like they could be dominant the rest of the way and win it all? And it reminds me, Daniel, It happened later for Ohio State last year, but it reminds me of Ohio State last year. Because we have to remember, Ohio State did lose the last game of the season to Michigan. But then they came into the playoff, and it's like everything we said about the potential of that team clicked from that first game against first game against Tennessee. It was turned up to level 11, and they rode that the rest of the way to a championship. And we've said this here on this podcast that the teams that are going to contend for championships start to play their best ball in November. And, I like looking at the trajectory of teams throughout the year of which teams are running out of gas, which teams are more dominating and starting to play closer games, which teams dominated week 1 and now they're starting to lose games, which teams, Daniel, played a lot of one-score games and now has played 2 dominant games against conference opponents, winning by multiple possessions, and Georgia's done that. I look at Georgia, Daniel, now, and I'm trying not to have an overreaction to 1 week. This has been building, but in November, they've played 3 very good football games, and it just eye test wise, Daniel, they look like a very complete football team right now. And so you match that with the results. They're a 1-loss team. They've got Charlotte this week. They've got Tech the end of the year. They will wait and see on the SEC championship. They need some stuff to happen for them to get in. Daniel, this is a team that's peaking at the right time. And as I start to project and say who can win a championship, Georgia is firmly in that conversation. They're starting to look like Georgia. I think that's my big takeaway this week. And have they turned into Death Star Georgia? We will see.
Yeah, that one's interesting. I like what you said about how there's some teams that, may have blown teams out at the beginning and playing closer games now. It is a trend. And you've got to, some teams are just limping to the finish line, just trying to get to the end. And it seems like Georgia wants to play everybody now. Kirby, the way he talked after the game, kind of seemed like he was calling a shot. Kind of seemed like he likes his team. He's confident in his team. And he's ready to go.
If you're a football guy, I wish I had it ready to play. Just go watch Kirby's press conference from Saturday. Just talking
Like
about we like to hit people, and they like to take people to the water. They like down and dirty. Yeah, to get
it was an all-timer. He had several clips from that presser.
He did. And look, to get this is something Saban did so well. To get these players, and look, they were probably getting paid well then. They're all getting paid very well now. Georgia's not paying guys. Georgia's paying guys. They're one of the biggest spenders still. But you've got to be bought into Kirby's culture. To get these kids to care about physicality and to care about hitting, it's a skill. Kirby's done it. They're hitting people. And again, that's why we're getting into November. And they're dominating the fourth quarter, Daniel, because teams can't hang for 60 full minutes, which we saw early on in the season with Georgia. Now, can you hang for 15 to 17 games and play at a high level? Ohio State was able to do that last year, right? Like they were able to go the full 17 when other teams couldn't. Georgia looks like a team that can do that this year, as does a few others. But Georgia's firmly in that conversation, whereas a month ago, I would not have really considered Georgia to be a title contender, firmly in the playoff conversation. But now I'm firmly putting Georgia in. They're in title contender mode is kind of my answer to my own question. So I'm excited to see how that scales the rest of the way. Daniel, what's your second question?
My second question or I guess what is most likely for the ACC championship game? There are so many scenarios, and I think that where I was talking about, Alabama being biggest domino to fall, I think this may be like the biggest wild card as far as who is going to represent the ACC and the CFP. Are they going to get 2 teams in? Me and you have both been on the, hey, there's a 1-team conference, but, it's crazy, dude. Georgia Tech, all they have to do, if they beat Pitt, they're in. Virginia, if they beat Virginia Tech, that's your championship. But Virginia also gets in if SMU loses to Louisville or California, or if Pitt loses to Georgia Tech or Miami. That's their second scenario. Miami has to have like 8 things happen. Pitt, of course, they need to beat Tech and Miami, and then they need SMU to lose. They need Virginia to beat Virginia Tech. There's a lot of list of things to happen. So SMU still has a shot, which is crazy. So I think Miami could still make the CFP as a 10-2 team if I don't think that they have a shot personally because of all of the things that have to happen for them. I don't think they have a shot to make the ACC championship game um, and get as an automatic qualifier. So I think the ACC gets their champion in, and then if Miami finishes out 10-2, I think they've got a shot.
I've got my ACC champ in our playoff predictions, which we're about to get to. Which I did. I went to if you go to bball.nothing.net, you can play this out for yourself. You can pick the winner of each game and hit calculate standings, and it runs all of it for you. So that's how I get my matchup and winner. SMU's is fairly straightforward. I mean, Virginia's is straightforward. Georgia Tech's is straightforward. SMU needs like one thing. Like Georgia Tech and Virginia control their own destiny. SMU just needs one of them to lose a game. And then after that, it gets really wonky. After that, okay, Daniel. My second question, we can start to get into playoff picks here. Is head-to-head going to matter? And when is it going to matter when it comes to selecting the final playoff? Because last night I saw a clip of whoever the new chairman is now saying, and remember, like head-to-head is a formula they use or a data point, not one of the ones they consider, because they rank teams in groups of 3. And so, for example, Miami and Notre Dame both have 2 losses. Notre Dame started off 8 spots ahead of Miami. Last week they were 5. This week they're 4. Now, has Miami done anything impressive in those weeks? No. I think they're correcting a mistake. Slowly but surely. So where, now they're 3 spots ahead. Well, now we're going to consider head-to-head. And Notre Dame wins out and magically drops behind Miami to correct a mistake they had long before now. But will it get to that? I think that's my question. And the other one is that I think is going to matter. Oklahoma and Michigan. Which, let's just dive into my playoff because this is where it comes up. I tweeted, or not tweeted. I sent this to our group chat with some buddies, and I have 2 spots left for 4 10-2 teams. Of course, this isn't going to really happen because it's college football and craziness is going to ensue in the next 2 weeks. But
Of course,
here's my playoff. I've got Indiana at 1, 13-0 Big Ten champs, obviously. Alabama, SEC champs, 11-2 at the 2 seed. Texas A&M at the 3 seed, 12-1 SEC runner-up. 4 seed, Texas Tech, 12-1 Big 12 champs. All right, 5 seed, Georgia, 11-1. 6 seed, Ole Miss, 11-1. Pretty straightforward. 7 seed, Oregon, 11-1. A lot of 11-1 teams here. 8 seed, Ohio State, 11-1. All right. Remember, Daniel, we're picking Michigan. All right.
That's right.
We've said it. We made a pact. We're picking Michigan. 11-1, obviously, because Michigan's going to beat them. All right. Let me go to the 12 seed, North Texas out of the American. 11 seed, ACC champ, SMU. I have them winning. All right. I have them getting in and winning the conference. I've got 2 spots left, Daniel. I've got 4 10-2 teams. And this is why I asked the question. I've got 10-2 Notre Dame, 10-2 Miami, 10-2 Oklahoma, 10-2 Michigan. And you've got Notre Dame, who will have had wins against Miami, obviously head-to-head, and also 12-1. Or excuse me, no, they lost to Texas A&M. Sorry. So what's Notre Dame's signature win?
They lost to Miami. Yeah.
Or sorry. I had that. I'm like, they lost to A&M and Miami. Those are their 2 losses. Signature win will have been USC, who is like 9-3. You've got Miami, who beat Notre Dame straight up, who's still 4 spots behind them because their 2 losses are quote-unquote worst losses. Oklahoma 10-2 with a win over SEC champion Bama. Michigan 10-2 with a win over
Ohio State.
Ohio State at the end of the year, who would have been the committee's number 1 team to that point. Daniel, I've gone with 3 different combinations here. I might change it now. I think Oklahoma's in, regardless. I think 10-2, Oklahoma is in. They have a win over Michigan. With that, then here comes the issue. You either put in Notre Dame or Miami. Which of those 2 at that point in the season? This is for 1 spot, Daniel. This is for this 1 seed. Do you put in Miami? You have to put in Miami at that point. They won head-to-head. Or do you say, to heck with it, both are out, Michigan's in. They beat Ohio State. They're 10-2. So then you have Oklahoma and Michigan in, which is what I have. And now you don't, that head-to-head, Oklahoma beat them. They're ahead of them in the seeding, and they're both in the playoff. and then you leave one of the head-to-head matchups out completely. You solve your own problem. Don't have to worry about who's ahead of who. They're both out. Look, we're going to be wrong on these predictions. There's way too many 1 and 2 loss teams in here. I got a sneaky feeling.
Yeah, what do you do with 9 and 3 Texas? You got to put. I'm just kidding.
Well, in this scenario, they're 8 and 4 because A&M wins.
Yeah, because A&M beats them. I got you.
I'm going back and forth who's going to win that game, but as of right now, that's who I've got. Yeah, that's my open playoff. What about you?
I've got Ohio State number 1, undefeated. I know we're actually going to pick them to lose. These are hypothetical.
Come on,
Ohio State. Well, I wanted to keep the same theme as last week. I was like, I don't want to take, you baked in the actual loss. I'm just, whatever. Ohio State number 1, hypothetically, undefeated Big Ten champ. The loser of that game, Indiana, is number 2. Surprisingly, I have Alabama as number 3 because they win the SEC championship, but they've got 2 losses. So I felt like they might get stuck in 3 instead of 2. And then I have number 4 is Texas A&M, the loser of the SEC championship. 5 is Georgia, 11 and 1. 6 is Texas Tech, Big 12 champ. 7 Oregon, 11 and 1. 8 Ole Miss, 11 and 1. Notre Dame at number 9, 10 and 2. And then I have Miami at 10, 10 and 2. I have ACC champion Pittsburgh. I kept it the same because I feel like after last week, the whole Notre Dame thing, he had us really confused. And I'm curious. This Georgia Tech Pitt game, I'm so glad we're picking it this week. I'm so curious what's going to happen. I just kept Pitt in there. I may even pick Georgia Tech in the game when we get later. I'm enamored with Pittsburgh. And then Tulane, they're finally getting some love from the CFP, so I figured I would just keep them in there for me as the group of 6 highest rated champion. So that's my 12.
Okay. I love it. We'll both be wrong.
Of course. Especially me, I have Ohio State undefeated. They're going to lose to Michigan.
They're going to lose to Michigan. So yeah, we'll fix that one by year's end. After they lose, we'll have a better playoff projection. All right, Daniel.
After Selection Sunday, we'll have a great playoff prediction.
We'll have a good one. Okay. XPR update, Daniel. There's a couple teams I wanted to address. Miami was 1. We've got them at 11, which is still behind Notre Dame, but closer. And there was one more, Daniel. I should have written this down. This is terrible podcasting. There's one more team I wanted to address as far as where they are. Texas at 16 for us in the playoff. I know they were, I think, 1 spot lower than that. We have Georgia up at 3. I think that's interesting. A&M actually below Oregon down at 5. I don't think their resume is that bad. Power ranking for Georgia is like throttled right now on several of the power rankings we use to help make our ranking. Bama down at 8. I was curious how far they were going to fall in our XPR. Texas Tech at 7. So Bama the highest 2-loss team. They're actually tied with Notre Dame on points. But any major takeaways from our XPR or the CFP rankings from Tuesday night?
Yeah, I'm just concerned. I'm not an Alabama fan, but as a college football fan and being fair, I'm just curious, with Alabama's wins that they've had, it just, to me, it's like, is the CFP committee just always going to punish you for having a couple of losses versus all of your great wins? I get you shouldn't put like a 4-loss team in, but a 2-loss team, again, they're not putting Alabama out, but they've got them at 10. And so if certain things were to happen, I'm concerned for Alabama to make the playoff. If they were, like I mentioned before, if they would potentially lose to Auburn, be 9-3. If they were to go to the SEC championship and lose and be 10-3, I think that they would at least have, a case to make for. They've had the maybe most impressive wins. Now they've also had the loss to Florida State, which was terrible. And in the hypothetical, if they lose to that Auburn team, that would be pretty terrible as well. But I think Alabama's got a bone to pick with being at 10 right now for the CFP. I think we have them more accurately rated at 8. I think that is
I think so
more
too.
where they should be. I don't think necessarily you should stay in the top 5 if you lose the second game, but I think that there should be a healthy discernment. And I just question CFP committee. I think everybody does. It's not an easy job, but yeah, you've got some people who either don't care or are arguing for their own self-interest. I'm always nervous about it. It feels like politics in sports, and I just want sports. How about that?
Daniel, I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say this. That I think there's tens of thousands of people that are more qualified to be on the committee than the people who are on the committee.
Yeah.
I think that's one of my problems with it. But yes, it's a hard job, which is why we need something like the XPR that have a committee that takes these teams, goes through all the data, and have people who love college football, who watch every game, who are watching Hawaii at 11 p.m. and watching CUSA Tuesdays and Maction Wednesdays, and have those people ranking teams and have that as one data point. Have them as, and this is what we try to do with the XPR is, hey, incorporate power ratings a little bit, tone it down. But if you're trying to figure out who the best teams are,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, I think you could just get the talking heads from across the sport that everybody stakes their flag on. I'm saying the Josh Pates of the world. Get a Josh Pate, Joel Klatt, bring us to. But put all these people, maybe not. The guys who are watching game, dude, give me oh my gosh, 24/7 Sports, the Cover 3 podcast. Give me those guys, all of them.
Bud Elliott,
not Danny Cannell,
Tom Fornelli,
Bud Elliott, Tom Fornelli. Thank you, Tom Fornelli.
Chip Patterson.
I need people who watch these games and are so involved in watching the most useless game. Give me those guys. That would be. I think the fans would vote and be like, "Yeah, let's." I mean, I like this guy. I don't like this guy. I like this guy. But it's you at least know that they care and they know ball. It's the same with politicians. Would you want someone who doesn't read the bill or someone who doesn't live in your district who's lying about that? No. You want the people, for the people, by the people. That's what college football should be as well.
I'm with you. We need a commissioner. We got to fix the calendar. We got to fix the committee. All this is fixable. Wrong people's hands on the wheel. Daniel, 3 games we're not picking that you're watching this with, that we are watching this weekend, as well as your team of the week from week 12.
Yeah, team of the week was Georgia. Very impressive win. Oklahoma was also on the list right there with their win on the road at Bryant-Denny Stadium against Alabama. Georgia, though, it just was a masterclass, I feel like, by Kirby Smart. We talked about, the middle 8 all the time, and Kirby was really big on the middle 8 as far as the last part of the first half, first part of the second half. Georgia didn't have a good, successful middle 8, even though they were leading 14-3 at halftime. And Kirby just kind of created his own middle 8 by going down and scoring with 4th down conversions and then eventually doing the onside kick. So I thought that was impressive. Big win. But as far as my 3 games, Texas against Arkansas, I think this is the classic letdown spot for Texas. They're 8.5-point favorite. They are favored in the game at home. They play Texas A&M next week, so you got the big rivalry next week, coming off of a deflating loss to Georgia. They knew if they kept it close that they had a shot at the CFP if they beat Texas A&M. Maybe that shot's gone. Maybe not if there's chaos. Arkansas is a frisky little team, and that is a rivalry game. So just watch out, man. Florida and Tennessee. How are we blessed to have this game this weekend? This is Cupcake Weekend in the SEC. This is when all the SEC teams famously get made fun of by every other conference for playing smaller schools, giving paycheck games. Well, this is Tennessee and Florida. We're used to seeing this one in September and sometimes October. This is the weekend before Thanksgiving. That's crazy. Give me that game every day of the week, man. This is in the swamp. Tennessee's a slight favorite. They have not won in Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, I don't know, 20 years. I don't know. It's been a long time since they've won down there. And last game is one that we were considering picking. Cincinnati hosting BYU. BYU is a 2.5-point favorite. that one has implications for what the Big 12 champion may be, Big 12 championship game at least. We just felt like this one may not quite be on the, ready for maybe all of our listeners. We've got a big, fan base that cares a lot about SEC and the ACC. So we stuck close to home with our picks for that one. That one's still going to be on my screen. I'm interested to see what happens in that game.
I did not realize how one-sided Florida-Tennessee was.
It's bad.
Yeah, I'm just, if you go on Wikipedia and look at series history, it shows you like colors, like of which team wins. That's a lot of blue. I'm like, oof. That's a lot of blue. 2003, by the way, was the last win in Gainesville. That's nuts.
Wow.
Yeah, I had no idea. Okay.
Everybody's talking about, is Tennessee going to beat Vanderbilt? But it's like, it's not going to.
They got Florida this week.
They got Florida this week. So
is Florida dead? That's we'll see. Maybe they're going to pull up the series history and say, oh, we got to show them who daddy is. All right, Daniel, 3 uniform matchups to watch this week. We've got some good ones. The uniform matchup of the week for this past week, Daniel, was BYU versus TCU. Look, I had Georgia, Texas. I'm going to walk back some of my comments in the Texas uniforms. I rightfully got pushed back on. I'm going to save that for the offseason, though. We'll do a full uniform breakdown, which I'm excited about. But BYU, TCU. Look, TCU's cleaned up their uniforms a good little bit. Nice little combo of the black, white, black combo for TCU. And then we had the white, royal, white combo for BYU with like those, again, good use of like a classic mix with the modern uniform thing of the like reflective logo on the helmet being royal was a nice pop instead of like an entire like mirror looking helmet. Auburn does that really well. They've got like a reflective logo on the helmet, nice little modern touch to a classic uniform. So great uniform matchup. We've got a few good ones this week. Number 1, Oregon-USC. I don't know what Oregon's wearing yet. Let me look while we're sitting here and make sure they haven't dropped it. But USC's away look is a classic. Oregon, I will say this, Daniel. Oregon has had more misses this year than they usually have in a season. Excited to see what they come up with this week. Maybe it's black against USC. We'll see. Excited to see. That should be a good uniform matchup though in that one. And then we've got Utah, Kansas State, 2 schools that have some really good uniforms, good color contrast there as well. And then Texas, Arkansas, the burnt orange. Texas being at home, big one there. Few they got left in the cutting room floor. Virginia Tech, Miami should be a good one. Penn State, Nebraska. Don't love Nebraska's away uniforms, but some blue and red should be nice on the field. Daniel, 4th quarter of our show. 4 picks against the spread. We begin with Oklahoma and Missouri. High noon. Oklahoma, I believe, controls their own destiny for the playoff. Win out and you're in. A 10-2 SEC team with a win over Alabama, win over Michigan, who's going to have 2 or 3 losses. I think you're in at that rate. Only loss being to a playoff team in Ole Miss, a playoff team, or excuse me, not a playoff team, a 9-3 Texas. I think you control your own destiny. But here's Missouri, Daniel. Only 7.5 points with home field baked in, with a backup quarterback baked in. Line seems a little smelly. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I mean, this one seems obvious to me, and I don't know if that's a problem because we have not been as great as we normally are against the spread this year, but Missouri, even with a backup quarterback, can run the ball. They have shown that all year. Obviously, Ahmad Hardy's having one of the best years in SEC history at this point already. And you add to it that Oklahoma just had such a signature win against Alabama. But we looked at the post-game win probability, expectancy, whatever. That they stole that game. That was
4%.
Very low. They did a good job. They were clutch when they had to be clutch. Their defense clamped down when they needed to clamp down. Their offense did exactly what, enough in that game. And they had the ball bounce their way the right time. So defensive score, things like that. I just don't know. I don't know how much you can replicate that. I'm not saying they're going to outright lose to Missouri. I absolutely think that's on the table, but 7.5 points to me is too much for going against a team that can run the ball like Missouri. And I just don't know if Oklahoma is like head and shoulders better than Missouri. And I think that's mostly an indictment on Oklahoma's offense. So I think Oklahoma's defense can lead them to win this game. And I think Oklahoma is a better team, but 7.5 points is too much. So give me the Tigers, give me the 7.5. I would not be surprised if they beat them, if Missouri wins. But I think Oklahoma probably just wins a close game and they can't get out of there, for 8 points or more. So 7.5 points, give me those with Missouri.
I'm with you. I don't know if Oklahoma can score enough to blow them out, like to win by 2 possessions. I mean, dude, the reason the post game win expectancy was 4% is because they got doubled up in yardage. Like Oklahoma still couldn't run the ball. They scored, was it 17 points off of turnovers, and Bama had a missed field goal, and they win by 2. So, look, you won the game. Your defense locked Alabama down. You forced those turnovers, deserved win. But if I'm forward looking from that game, there's a reason this is 7.5 and not 10.5. And I'm taking the Tigers with the points. I think Oklahoma wins a close game, but if Missouri pulls off this upset, I'm going to be happy holding on to 7.5 points regardless. Again, Oklahoma's offense is still very pedestrian, especially running the ball still. And Missouri has a very good rush defense. They can get after the passer. They can get sacks on John Mateer. Daniel, I mean, I would not be surprised at all if this is like a 17-14 game. The total on this game, I think, is 42. So, I mean, Vegas is expecting like a 21-14 game. I think that's exactly what you're going to get in this one. I'll say Oklahoma wins like 20-14, which is like 34 points. I mean, that's crazy. Yeah, the good on good matchup I'm excited to watch is the Oklahoma rush defense against the Missouri rush offense. That will be very special to watch to see who gets an edge there, because I think that could decide the game, which I think will be very close. So give me the 7.5 points. I'll take the Tigers plus the points. Oklahoma to win, but would not be surprised at all by an upset here. More upsets are going to happen, Daniel. We didn't see Oklahoma over Alabama last week. More upsets are going to happen. This could be the next one as we're chalking up just, Oklahoma 10-2. They just got to beat this little Missouri team at home, and boop, Missouri pulls off an upset. Would not surprise me. Give me those points. Another game with playoff implications. Vandy in Kentucky. Vandy at home, 9.5-point favorite. I feel like no one's talking about the fact that, again, Vanderbilt controls their own playoff destiny. They went out, and they are absolutely in, with their only losses being to Texas and Alabama, one of those a playoff team, both on the road. They're in, Daniel. 9.5-point favorites against Kentucky, which if you had told me 3 years ago, I would have said you're insane to give me 9.5 points to Kentucky in this matchup. Vandy, a 9.5-point favorite. Who do you like in Nashville?
Yeah, Vanderbilt, I mean, they're the story here. This is the reason they're on this is, for us to talk to them. Diego Pavia, I mean, 28 touchdowns on the year, leads the team in rushing, 600 yards, 2,400 yards through the air. I think that, he's kind of, I don't want to say he's taken a step back in the Heisman race, but he's certainly still in there. Everybody knows him. He talked about him being one of the last YOLO quarterbacks there, with being an older quarterback. That's kind of been a theme for us this year. This is at home. I like Vandy to win. I just think there's a lot of pressure on Vandy right now. And I think this Kentucky team, ever since Cutter Boley has been the guy, freshman, of course, he's going to have his lumps, but he has really grown this year. Versus like AP rated teams, he's over 70% passing. I mean, he's like, in the 60s for the year, but you could see, I mean, against Tennessee, of course, their defense is questionable, but he threw 5 touchdowns. He's really kind of come into his own. So I think that they're going to score on Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt is going to outpace them and essentially win by, a touchdown, maybe even 8 points, but 9.5 points is a lot of points. I think this opened at 10.5 and got bet down pretty quick. Give me Kentucky with the points. I think Vanderbilt wins. I think they are one of these teams that's just trying to survive. This is, they've got a rivalry game next week with Tennessee. They know that game is important for them to get into the playoff. This one, they just have to win. I don't know if style points are going to be right here, right now with this team for this game. I think basically they're like, let's just get out with a dub. So give me Kentucky plus 9.5 for this one.
I was going to take the 9.5. I'm laying it, man. This is November. Vandy is off of a bye. I'm not sure if Kentucky is actually, but off of a bye. They try to think of who to compare this Kentucky team to. And I think it's South Carolina as far as like profile of team or they rank offensively and defensively. I mean, I know it was September, but they beat South Carolina 31-7 in this game. I don't think that type of result is off the table for Vanderbilt here. I think Clark Lee's a very good football coach. I believe in that culture and what he's built. I think they're going to be locked in for this game because they have to be for every game. I think this is still Vanderbilt where you don't have the luxury to look ahead to next week. I think that's a good thing for Vanderbilt in that in a good way, you're still just Vandy. And so it's disrespectful to give you 9.5, to lay 9.5 points. I think that so I think embodying the we are Vanderbilt, you treat every game like a big game. The elite unit on this field is Vanderbilt's offense. This is, a top 25 rushing offense, a top 10 scoring offense, a top 15 offense in yards per attempt passing. Like you said, Pavi has been elite this year. He should absolutely be in the Heisman conversation because Heisman's not just a stat award. It's best player. And I think best player a lot of times is impact on your team. Vanderbilt would not be where they are without Diego Pavia. Like what he does for their offense, both in the run and pass game, that causes teams to have to play every asset of them is special. And I think they win and cover against Kentucky. So give me the doors, lay the 9.5. All right. We go to Oregon, USC 330. Man, Oregon laying 9.5 here. I have felt two different ways about this on opposite ends at two different parts of this week. Daniel, who do you like in Eugene?
I think for a lot of what you just said about Vanderbilt is kind of how I feel about Oregon, where I think that team that can, beat you up is still in there. I think that playing a team like, Iowa that they did a couple weeks ago, and then of course USC just came off of playing Iowa. You saw what they were able to do against Minnesota, where they basically ratcheted it back up and just beat them pretty. Dude, USC, they've got to win out to make the playoff. I've got concerns about this team, but they showed a lot of guts in the rain against Iowa last week, but they didn't cover. And Oregon has been covering. They didn't cover against Iowa, but I think that Iowa is just like that for everybody. But give me Oregon. I like them to cover 9.5. I just think that this one could get sideways and you could kind of see the deflation when USC realizes that they're going to lose, because this may be their hope for the playoffs. And I think that Oregon can kind of pile it on. So give me Oregon. I'm going to lay the points, 9.5. I think they win big. This is their kind of shot to try to punch their ticket, at least in hopes that an opportunity opens up for them. If Michigan were to win, they can make the Big Ten championship, or at 11-1 be a contender for the CFP.
Daniel, I'm trying a new strategy this week. I didn't tell you till now. These three games I've picked, I felt the opposite way on. And so then I picked the other side because I've been so bad against the spread, and then looked for ways to help it fit why I would choose that team. So I'm doing that here again. Give me the Trojans. Here's how USC can keep it close. Number one, rain is likely still for this game. First, it looks like it was going to be the whole game. Now it doesn't look like that, but rain likely. And, this is still opponent adjusted on a per play basis. The number one offense in the country belongs to USC. I think that's gone under the radar this year. If this were an Oklahoma team, I think we'd be talking about, if this were an Oklahoma Big 12 team under Lincoln Riley, they'd probably be undefeated. And we'd be talking about, how good this Oklahoma team is. My worry is USC has not played well on the road this year still. They did against Nebraska, and that was important for me to see. Was like, okay, you can go on the road and get a big win because they did it so poorly against Notre Dame. And then who was their other loss? Illinois, at Illinois earlier in the year. They won against Nebraska. That was important to see. But now they go on the road to Oregon. I don't think they can win because I still think their defense is a liability. But I think they can make it mucky and keep it close. They're not getting beat because they're not physical, which is how USC was 1, 2, and 3 years ago. So they're not losing for the same reasons. They're still building there. I think they can score enough to make this a 1-touchdown game instead of a 2-possession game. And so give me the Trojans to cover. I do like Oregon to win. USC has a much easier game next week. Look, both teams control their own playoff destiny. And if you want to say who needs it more, then Oregon can lose still. And look, I just think if you win 10 games in the Big Ten or SEC, you're most likely in. Oregon can still lose again. They play Washington next week. They've got to be locked in. USC, you lose a third game, I think you're definitely out for USC. They need it. But I like Oregon to win. Give me the Trojans to cover the 9.5. The only game I felt good about this week.
That you've been doing the opposite, like George Costanza, and we'll see, dude. You might go 4-0 because when he did the opposite in that episode on Seinfeld, I mean, he got the date with the pretty girl, he got the promotion at the job, everything went right for him the time he decided to do the opposite. So this might work out for you.
Yeah. All right. It's the only game I felt good about all week, Daniel. And I'm not picking opposite on this one. Georgia Tech and Pitt. Georgia Tech, a 2.5-point favorite on the flats at Hyundai Field at Bobby Dodd Stadium. Look, Georgia Tech still in control of their own playoff destiny, still in control of their own ACC destiny, and playing for that championship game. They win, they're in, Daniel. This is their ticket to the ACC championship, their ticket to Charlotte. Pitt, also alive in the ACC championship race. Who do you like in this game in Atlanta?
Yeah, I played my hand a little bit when I talked about Pitt being in the playoff. I tried to bury the lead a little bit by saying I could still pick Georgia Tech. Think Georgia Tech can win and should win. I just have been watching this team slowly, I don't want to say unravel, but as they've played some of these games, 2 weeks ago, lose to NC State. Okay, it was on the road. It's a tough environment. Last week, everybody just checked it off. They're going to win. We don't even need to show up or talk about it. They were in the fight of their lives until the clock hit triple zeros. They still won, which is great, for their playoff hopes and everything like that. I know the ACC people are like, if Georgia Tech just wins, it's over. They've solidified their spot. It makes it easy. But if they lose, it comes this question of who's going to be in the championship game and all this stuff. Haynes King's the leading rusher. He's obviously their, great in the pass game. Already over 3,000 yards for the year combined, 24 touchdowns, 14 rushing touchdowns as a quarterback. Unreal, dude. He's been a difference. And I'm reluctant to pick Pittsburgh because I do think that Georgia Tech has a lot of pride and wants to win this game. My heart says Georgia Tech, but I'm taking Pittsburgh because I think that I would be mistaken if I took Tech. So give me Pitt plus the 2.5. If Tech finds a way to win by 1, then I win both ways. How about that? So, but yeah, give me Pitt in the 2.5 points because I think that I just think they're going to represent the ACC, man. I don't know. This whole smokescreen that Pat Narduzzi has just confused the mess out of me. So I don't know. I just went with my gut last week that they should get blown out by Notre Dame. I'm going with my gut this week that they should beat Georgia Tech. It's tough to wipe off a loss like that, though. So we'll see. But give me Pitt plus the points.
Daniel, I'm taking Pitt to win straight up. Because this is a look-ahead spot, man. They were looking past Notre Dame to this Georgia Tech game. You heard Pat Narduzzi. That was not a big game. He said, I'm glad you asked. You're like, oh, no. This is not a big game. We can get beat. You know, he told his team, hey, we can lose 100-11, and it does not matter if we win the next two. He was giving his team permission to just lay down, let Notre Dame do whatever they want, because if we win next week, we're going to go to the ACC championship game. And that's exactly what they're going to do, Daniel. They're going to go to the Flash. They're going to beat Georgia Tech because they're a more complete team than Georgia Tech is. Georgia Tech this year, who's the best defense Georgia Tech has faced this year? I'll do one better. How about the best offense? Georgia Tech's giving up a ton of points. Out of the Power 5, Daniel, they rank for opponent-adjusted metrics. Out of 68 Power 4 teams, 66th out of 68 Power 4 teams as far as where their defense ranks. Their pass defense ranks 48th. Their rush defense, 66th. This is a Pitt team. They can absolutely throw the ball. They're okay rushing. And a Pitt defense that is very rare, like a top 15 level defense against a top 10 level offense. That'll be good on good. I think anyone can score on Georgia Tech. So I think Pitt's going to score enough to win. All they need is one stop. The Georgia Tech offense goes out in the field knowing they have to score every single time to win. Haynes King does everything, which is why he should be considered for the Heisman, because he does everything for that offense. I don't think it's going to be enough to beat Pitt. They've been preparing for this game for 2 weeks, looking past little old Notre Dame to this big one against Georgia Tech. Give me the Pitt Panthers to win straight up. It's the only game I felt really good about. I circled this one, Daniel, like 4 weeks ago. We were talking, and I said, yeah, Pitt's beating Georgia Tech. Like, Georgia Tech's losing one of these games to NC State or Pitt. And they lost to NC State. Or who did they play last week, Georgia Tech?
Last week they played Boston College.
Boston, goodness, I didn't see that one coming.
So, yeah, they lost NC State, and then they were down to Boston College for most of the game. They had to heroic comeback at the end.
Yeah, give me the Pitt Panthers to win. I'm getting 2.5 points. I like it. They would be favored on a neutral. That's what that's telling you right there. Pitt would be favored on a neutral, or it'd be a pick-em, depending on how many points you're given for
Bobby Dodd
home field. Daniel.
Yep.
This is a good one. Be sure to follow us at the Extra Point Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can follow Daniel on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Karnes with a K. That'll do it for this edition of the Extra Point. He is Daniel. I am Jacob. See ya.